Just a few months ago, that section of the Pentagon would have been virtually empty. But at this time of day, early morning or mid-morning, the Pentagon's very busy. It's impossible to say how many casualties there may be. But there have been a large number of people cited being removed on stretchers. And again, as one survivor said, the floor just buckled up under him and the roof caved in on him.
All right, Mick, thank you very much. We want to move a couple of miles away from you right now to the White House, where Bob Kerr is standing by. And Bob, we understand that building has now been evacuated?
Matt, that's true. It is utterly surreal. As soon as word came of the Pentagon incident, we were rather forcefully removed from the White House. The scene was one of administrators, cooks, whatever, running at fairly high speed all the way out of the building through the top gates. Then we huddled for a while in Lafayette Park across the street, and we've been moved now from there a block or so away. The offices along Jackson Place, which are across the street from the White House and adjacent to Lafayette Park, also have been evacuated. And in the most surreal of this morning's scenes here at the White House, a white plane, a very big jet, was flying an unusual pattern near the White House over Lafayette Park very slowly. It made one circle, and then we have not seen it since. There was a lot of concern about what that plane might be, but again, it's only speculation. But most people say that since flights have been cleared from U.S. airspace and it was a totally white plane, looked unusual to all of us, that it was a government plane of some kind.
We should point out that we're looking at pictures, Bob, as you speak, of the World Trade Center, because all of the camera crews have been evacuated from the White House as well. When do you expect President Bush to arrive there, Bob?
Well, Katie, he's coming back directly, and you figure it's about a 2-hour flight, so you can do the math. The reason I said that it was so surreal was that within just about 20 minutes ago, they were still conducting tours. You had hordes of tourists and others still in the White House on tour, lining up outside to get in. There seemed to be absolutely no unusual activity outside the White House until word came of the incident at the Pentagon. So it's been quite a dramatic shift here.
You know, in terms of responsibility, Tom and Matt and Bob, apparently a senior official from the Radical Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine denied on Tuesday the group had any connection to the plane crash. An anonymous caller had told television that it was behind the crash, but, quote, "I emphasize that the story released on television by an anonymous person is totally incorrect." Tassir Khaled, a senior official from the DFLP Politburo in the Palestinian territories, told Reuters. The DFLP is against hijacking planes and against endangering the lives of civilians who are not connected with the struggle of this region, he said.
There are going to be a lot of claims and counterclaims in the course of the next 24 hours or so. This is a task for investigators of extraordinary magnitude to try to determine who did this and how they got away with it. You think about an American Airlines flight that was on its way from Boston to Los Angeles, was hijacked in midair. They're now citing transmissions from the plane, so they have hard evidence of that, and then brought down here and made to fly into the Twin Trade Towers. Did one of the hijackers get control? Did they shoot the pilot? It boggles the mind beyond our ability to figure out what was going on.
You talk about transmissions. I was just curious. Have you had any evidence of what was said during those
They're just saying they're citing transmission to know that the plane had been hijacked. That's all that they're saying about it at this point. We also ought to remind everyone, once again, this is an exceptional development. The FAA has banned all takeoffs at all airports across America. This country, in terms of air travel, has been immobilized. A good portion of the nation's capital, the most powerful center in the world, has been immobilized as well as a result of these terrorist
And that's
attacks.
a very haunting description that Bob Kerr just gave of that low-flying aircraft near the White House, and one can only wonder if that was something that ultimately ended up in the Pentagon.
We just saw a live picture of what seemed to be a portion of the building falling away from the World Trade Center. If we can re-rack that to about 20 seconds ago, you'll see something dramatic happening, and I don't know whether it's another explosion or a portion of the building falling away, but something major just happened at that building. Here we go to the tape.
We have the tape.
And watch what happens in the left-hand tower. I don't know if this is the correct tape. There, something there is about to happen, falling away right there.
Yeah, it looks like a big chunk of it has just peeled away.
One can only hope that the area has been evacuated, but of course you wonder about all the emergency vehicles and the people who might have been injured early in the morning.
Well, you remember when the bomb went off in the basement of it in 1993, how much damage was done throughout that building, how much chaos there was at that time. These are 2 coordinated airplane attacks on the building on the upper reaches of it. That will have an enormous structural effect. Those buildings, I think that it's fair to say, will probably have to be brought down. It's too early to speculate on that, but there's been that kind of damage.
Let's talk again. You were talking about
Here we have somebody actually
this is a reporter here in New York from WNBC. You talk about the fact this plane was taken from Boston on the way to Los Angeles. The reports are that it was being diverted to JFK. And just for people who aren't familiar with the geography of this area, the southern tip of Manhattan would be very much near the flight, the landing pattern for JFK Airport. It could have been easy for a hijacker to pretend that he was taking that plane to JFK and veer off at the last minute.
Yeah, I heard one eyewitness say that over Washington Square, which is in the lower reaches of Manhattan, he saw a plane go over at about 1,000 feet, apparently the American Airlines flight, and then do what he described as a sharp right turn right toward the World Trade Center. He then lost sight of it.
And one eyewitness here in this AP report says he was getting off a PATH train to the World Trade Center and saw bodies falling out of the building. As he approached it, police told him to get out of the building immediately. He ran outside and watched people jump out of the first building, and then there was a second explosion.
This footage we're seeing right now shows that the damage is so severe. I mean, we had seen what seemed to be 2 fairly self-contained impact craters before, and now it appears something much more dramatic has happened to at least one of those towers.
These pictures are beyond belief.
We have a report that the second plane may have flown out of Newark, New Jersey. This is an official who was speaking on the condition of anonymity. Again, there is no confirmation of that. We just know that there were 2 planes that went in. The first one apparently was an American Airlines flight that was from Boston to Los Angeles. We're now seeing it from the harbor view of this continuing damage and destruction to the World Trade Center.
Incidentally, Tom, I just want to interrupt you for 2 seconds because apparently Jamie Gangel has some more information for us. Jamie?
Spoken again to U.S. officials with access to the highest intelligence, and they are now confirming that it does appear that at the Pentagon it was a plane. Again, they are saying they believe now a 3rd plane was involved at the Pentagon.
And of course, this has been the nightmare, Katie, for national security officials for a long time. We talk about nuclear bombs and those kinds of exchanges or invasions, but everyone has been terribly worried about the suitcase-sized bomb of some kind or an airplane or an attack on our subways in the large cities. And this, obviously, no one had anticipated. 3 airplanes that were deliberately aimed at critical targets in America. We can only hope that it's over for today, but officials are taking no chances on all that. They're evacuating all critical buildings because, as Mr. Johnson said earlier, this is an open society. James Kallstrom from the FBI also pointing out that almost anyone can come in here. They have access to so many instruments that can be used as instruments of attack and terrorism, and that certainly has been the case today.
Let's go to our State Department correspondent, Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, what can you tell us?
Well, this from the FBI. The State Department has been evacuated. There was a meeting going on in the Operations Center. Other top officials were in the Situation Room at the White House. Colin Powell is in Bogota, Colombia, on a 2-day trip. But this very interesting information, Katie, Matt, and Tom, from the FBI, they had been operating a massive exercise from their hostage rescue unit. All of their top teams, about 50 personnel, helicopters, equipment, were in Monterey, California for the last 2 days, scheduled to fly back today commercially. So all of those people are out of place. It's fair to say, according to sources that we've talked to here at NBC, that the FBI rescue operations and other FBI operations are really in chaos right now because they can't reach their officials in New York. All of their phone lines are down, and now you've got all of their special experts on this stuck in Monterey, California, trying to get a military flight back because there are no longer commercial flights. So they are seriously out of pocket, and there is a real breakdown of the FBI anti-terror coordination team, which is, of course, the principal team that would lead any effort and was so effective under Jim Kallstrom in New York City during the World Trade Center bombing and the TWA explosion, which, of course, turned out not to be terror.
Andrea, is the State Department taking this claim of responsibility from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine seriously? Are they giving any credence to that, or are they dismissing it, or how do they feel about who might have been responsible for this?
I think it is far too early for them, even the best experts in the government, to figure this out. They have one instant reaction, as you know, and it could be wrong, but their immediate reaction in a case like this would be to look toward Osama bin Laden and the collateral groups connected to him, simply because he has proved with the embassy bombings in Africa that he is the one terror leader who is capable of this kind of highly coordinated attack. The bombings went off in Tanzania and in Kenya almost simultaneously. It was extraordinarily well coordinated. They proved their case to a jury effectively and have managed to develop a great deal of information from sources, from in fact turning some former members of his network.
Andrea?
So they believe, Tom, that he is the most likely person, but it's far too early to say anything.
We want to tell you that American Airlines has confirmed that one of its flights, American Airlines flight number 11 from Boston's Logan Airport, scheduled to go to LAX. It left at 8 a.m. this morning. 45 minutes later, it was diverted into the World Trade Center. It was the airline that was involved. We can only assume on a popular flight like that it probably had a capacity load of passengers and crew on board. There was a hijacking. That was the first plane that was involved. We don't know about the second plane yet, nor do we know the origins of a third plane that deliberately flew itself into the Pentagon this morning near the heliport. NBC Jim Miklashevsky now has been forced to evacuate that building, and so we'll have to wait till we hear from him.
Saw some pretty dramatic pictures from the Pentagon just moments ago, Matt.
Let's go back to a few seconds ago. This is now about an hour after the first impact. We saw some dramatic footage of a portion of one of the Twin Towers, actually it appearing to fall away from the rest of the building. Can we go to the tape now? Here we go, right here. This is, I mean, when you look at it, the building has collapsed. That tower just came down.
Let's go to Bob Bazell, who is at St. Vincent's Hospital. Bob, what's going on there? What can you tell us?
Katie, St. Vincent's Hospital is one of the hospitals that's closest to the World Trade Center. In the last few minutes, ambulances have been coming in one right after another. Most of the people they're bringing in have second and third degree burns, very serious burn victims. They say the smoke inhalation people will probably be the most serious, but they're not even close to getting to them yet. There's a triage operation that's going on in the area. Ambulances are being dispatched to every hospital in New York City. The entire staff of this hospital has come in from wherever they are, and it's true at hospitals across New York City. They're standing there. As soon as an ambulance pulls in, dozens of medical workers rush up to it. But it's a carnage that's just beginning. Everybody here, the emergency service workers I spoke to who have been down into the World Trade Center site, say this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be massive amounts of casualties.
Bob, what are they telling you about people? Were there many people inside the building, or is it just too early to tell where the people were?
Well, there were certainly, probably hundreds, even thousands of people in the building, even though it was before 9 o'clock on the start of the usual work period, because it's just such a large area. So the number of casualties is just enormous, and they're just beginning to sort it out and just starting to get to the first few that they can get to. But the ambulances are just coming in. They're lined up. Every ambulance in New York City has been summoned. They're standing in a queue. They go in as soon as they can get a victim and bring them up here right away.
Bob, we're also looking at the lower end of Manhattan now as a result of the collapse of one World Trade Center. That whole financial district is now engulfed in smoke and debris, and there probably is going to be a lot more smoke inhalation problems as a result of what's going on.
Almost certainly, Tom. I was actually standing and saw that collapse, and everybody here just gasped, and even the medical workers and the ambulance attendants, when they saw that, the people who are used to tragedy, grabbed each other and hugged each other, and some started to cry.
And of course, one wonders about the triage unit.
Exactly, we're close to the base of that building trying to evacuate people. And when a building of that size falls, it does not fall on its own footprint.
No, absolutely. I'm several blocks north of there, so I don't know what that area looks like, but one can only imagine.
Well, the consequences go on, not just to the World Trade Center and to the poor people who were trapped and caught there, but of course that is the heart of the world financial markets, which have now been shut down effectively as well. So the ripple effect continues this morning as we all try to adjust psychologically and intellectually to what we are witnessing here. It is difficult to comprehend, but this country, the strongest country in the world, has been the target of a major coordinated terrorist attack, and the end is not over yet, even if it's confined to just these three targets. The ripple effect goes on. All air traffic has been shut down. There will be no financial markets in place today. Business has been stopped across the country.
And of course, who knows the human toll that will be the result of this action. Matt actually just pointed out to me on any given day, 50,000 people, Tom, work at the World Trade Center.
And at 8:45 in the morning, if they're not in the building, they're around the building. That's a beehive of activity down there. There is no more active area in terms of pedestrian traffic.
I hate to keep going back to the collapse of that tower, but if you consider that this plane hit at mid-structure and that would have probably taken out the electrical in the building where elevators wouldn't work and people struggling to get some way out of that tower, and it takes a long time to come down over 100 stories, and to think about the possible loss of life that just occurred by the collapse of that southeastern tower is just amazing. Minna Kathuria is with the Today Show, and she apparently saw the collapse of one of those towers. Minna?
Yes, hi, Matt.
Tell me what you saw.
We're on the corner of Duane and West Broadway, walking down towards the Twin Towers, and it just collapsed. It looks like it looks sort of like the building just demolished. Smoke, clouds, clouds of smoke everywhere. People running towards me. I was going towards the Twin Towers. People were going away from the away from the towers, and it was just people running like I've never seen a scene like it.
Have you, from where you were, Minna, did you see many of the injured being treated? Is there any indication as the type of perimeter that the EMS people were dealing with?
No, I hadn't gotten that close yet. They were sort of blocking off the street. Now what they're doing is totally clearing out the area. And more emergency officials are coming in to help.
Can you just give me an idea of the reaction of people down there, Minna? Just pedestrians?
Everyone in tears. People who were. I met some woman who was in the building to the right of where the first thing happened, and just all crying, wondering if the people that they know in the buildings next door are okay.
Jamie, Minna, thank you very much. Minna, take care of yourself. Jamie Gangel, our national correspondent, is on the phone now with some more information. Jamie?
Katie, as you well know, buildings around town are being evacuated. The State Department has been evacuated. The White House has been evacuated. And the Pentagon has been evacuated. Intelligence officials tell me that they do believe at the Pentagon that was a third plane going down. They have had, the intelligence sources that I've talked to say that they have not received any claim of responsibility yet.
Jamie, have you gotten any information from Reagan National Airport as to air traffic in the area this morning, or anybody who might have somehow traced this plane or figured out from where it came or where it was going?
They still do not have any of those details yet. It is almost impossible. They were confused for a long time as to whether it's a bomb or a plane. They say now that it appears to be a plane, but they say that is all the information that they have. As you know, the FAA has shut down all aircraft now, and they are now going back and trying to sort that out. But they do not have any information on that yet.
Do they know what type of plane it might have been?
There is no, unfortunately, they just don't have that yet.
All right, Jamie. Thank you very much, Jamie. We'll be talking with you.
It goes without saying this is the most serious attack in the United States in more than 100 years. Not since the War of 1812, and certainly the damage that we did to ourselves during the Civil War has this country suffered this kind of damage within its interior. Obviously, Pearl Harbor, which triggered World War II, was a horrific event as well, but there has never been an event to match the magnitude of this one, in which everything has been shut down in terms of air traffic. The national capital has been immobilized. The White House, State Department, Pentagon has been attacked. The financial markets have been shut down. There's an untold loss of life here in Manhattan, the nerve center of America, to say nothing of what's going on at the Pentagon.
When's the last time? I mean, this is a shot of New York City and downtown Manhattan that many people can't remember.
It
the
looks
shot
like
of one tower.
It looks like a movie, frankly, that this is unfolding, and it combines the horror of the TWA Flight 800 bombing and the Murrah Federal Building, because it's both of these incidents, of course, coming together in the most horrific way.
By now, I would guess that everyone is up across all the time zones in America. It's 7:15 in the West, obviously, but for those of you who are just joining us at 8:45 Eastern Time, 8:42 Eastern Time today, an American Airlines flight 11 from Boston to LAX was crashed into one of the World Trade Center buildings. 15 minutes later, another plane hit the other one. That building has now collapsed. Within an hour of those two attacks, the Pentagon was hit, now we're told, by a plane, an untold number of casualties there. President Bush has been on the air. He was in Florida at the time saying apparently this was a terrorist attack. Everyone now believes that, carefully coordinated from the air. And the consequences of it, in terms of human loss and the effect on this country, are still to be determined.
We're going to break away briefly from our national coverage in New York to bring you news from here in Washington on these events.
As you can see, Megan McGrath is live at the Pentagon from Columbia Pike, very near the Pentagon. Megan, what can you tell us about the latest happening there?
Joe, I can't hear you. I'm assuming that you can hear and see me at this point. We are on Columbia Pike. If you take a look behind my shoulder, you can see the south side of the Pentagon. Actually, just moments before this happened, after the World Trade Center incident, we were headed from a different location to National Airport. We were on 395 when all of a sudden we heard a boom and we saw this huge fireball rise from the Pentagon. We knew immediately that something terribly wrong had happened, and we made our way to this location. We originally pulled up, there's a gas station nearby, had a really good view of the south side of the Pentagon. Smoke, flames, it was just a real mess, very, very shocking. And of course, people were running around. The Navy Annex is located nearby. There was all kinds of smoke in the area. People were very, very confused. There was a construction crew nearby. They didn't understand what happened, and people were just running toward the scene, trying to see if they could be of any assistance, trying to figure out what happened. Now, I have an eyewitness here.
Is a very high priority of this hospital. And the staff have been doing a heroic job in terms of responding.
This morning when she saw what happened, can you tell me, you say that you saw a plane actually strike the side of the Pentagon. Tell me exactly what you saw.
I saw a plane going down, big plane, commercial liner type, going down full speed and just inside the side of the Pentagon. Obviously, it was going in the Pentagon purposely. And we were driving down Columbia Pike, and it just flew right over us, as I said, full speed. And I told my husband, it's going in the Pentagon, it's going in the Pentagon. And then we heard the huge crash, saw this fireball and flame and smoke and...
So you actually saw the plane impact the side of the building?
Yes, I did.
Just one plane?
Just one plane.
Tell me a little bit about the size of the plane. Did you see any commercial markings, any markings at all on the plane?
I didn't see any marking because it was, we just saw the underneath portion of it. So, and it just, as I said, was going full speed. So we didn't have time really to see anything. Plus with the trees, you know, maybe if I could have looked at it longer, maybe I would have seen something. But with the trees there, the trees line, we didn't see any type of marking. But it was a big plane, maybe 737. My husband said 747, but I'm not positive. I don't know for sure. But it was big. Definitely the kind of plane you get on when you want to fly to LA or wherever.
Now, we've been here probably about the same length of time as you have. I have heard a total of 3 booms, that initial boom, and then I heard 3 less large booms, but booms nonetheless. Have you heard the same thing?
Yes, I did. Smaller explosions. Maybe it's inside the building, some gas lines exploding or something. I don't know. But we heard the other explosions. I don't see any other smoke anywhere, so I suppose it's from inside the building.
Okay, Isabel James, thank you very much for joining us. So there is a certain amount of chaos. From what we can kind of gather from here, it looks like they have let everybody out of the Navy Annex. There are just a lot of people wandering in the parking lot, and as you can see over there, a lot of them sitting up on the ridge and just watching as emergency crews arrive on the scene and do their job. And of course, everybody is trying to piece together exactly what happened. I mean, this was very unexpected. I can just give our example. We were just driving by, just happened to be in the same location as the Pentagon, when all of a sudden there was this big boom. It was quite sudden, it was quite loud, there was a fireball. We couldn't actually see the Pentagon itself when the explosion occurred because we were up on the highway. We saw the cloud of smoke and the fireball rise above the freeway, and we knew what direction it was coming from. We knew it was in the vicinity of the Pentagon, and that's when we arrived here on the scene. Should say that as soon as we got here, there were flames again on the south side of the Pentagon, and a short time later, I would say, we heard, and these are approximate times, we heard roughly 10 minutes later a smaller explosion. Didn't see anything unusual. The building was already on fire and was already smoking, so I don't know whether it was perhaps a gas line inside the building or something else entirely. But we have, since the initial explosion, have heard two smaller explosions, but we just don't have the information about what exactly happened there. But you just heard from the eyewitness. In fact, she's the second person that I have talked to who says that they saw a plane actually slam into the side of the Pentagon. And of course, in light of what happened in New York this morning, certainly is an interesting turn of events. But in terms of the rescue effort, we have been seeing emergency personnel arriving on the scene ever since this happened. You can see there appears to be, I don't know, John, can you see there's a some military personnel up here on the ridge. This ridge right here, a lot of people have been coming out of the annex, and a lot of cars have been stopping on the highway, and people have been getting out of their cars, and they've been up on this ridge because you get a pretty good view of what's going on. And you can see that the military personnel are now telling them to get off the ridge, and they're going to be clearing out the area. We're going to try to stay here to keep you on top of what's going on and what we can see from our vantage point, but we'll have to wait and see what the military tells us to do. Back to you all.
Okay, thanks very much, Megan. And I want to give you this apparently a portion of the Pentagon has collapsed, according to the Associated Press. Also, according to the Associated Press, this morning, there is a report that General Richard Myers, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that prior to the crash into the Pentagon, military officials had been notified that another hijacked plane had been heading from New York area to Washington. He said he assumed that the hijacked plane from New York to Washington was the one that hit the Pentagon. But again, you can see a portion of the Pentagon there has collapsed in that very dramatic picture.
Meanwhile, all government buildings in the District of Columbia, including the State Department and the White House, have been evacuated. As we've heard, all commercial traffic throughout the U.S. has been halted. Let's go to Cheryl Johnson, who is with Metro, who can tell us what these events, what kind of effect they've had on Metro trains and buses throughout our area. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning. So far, we have closed our Pentagon Metro station, which is, of course, nearest the Pentagon itself. And in addition to that, we're not sending trains across the Yellow Line Bridge. So we're using our buses to do what we call a bus bridge, or take people from L'Enfant Plaza Station to Pentagon City, because, again, we are not sending trains across the Yellow Line Bridge. And, of course, at the Pentagon Station, we're doing a bus bridge from Arlington Cemetery to Pentagon City.
Okay, so if you wanted to get to National Airport from the district, you'd take a bus from the Pentagon Station to, how does that work?
You would take a bus from either the L'Enfant Plaza Station to Pentagon City.
Okay.
And then continue your commute, and that's the Yellow Line. Or if you're on the Blue Line, you would get off at Arlington Cemetery to catch a bus, and then you would go past the Pentagon Station by bus, and then get off at Pentagon City to continue your commute on the Blue Line to get to National Airport.
Okay, of course, once again, all airports across the country have been shut down by the FAA.
Well, if that's the case, then I'm sure people are attempting to just use the Metro to get to where they need to get to at this point, because I understand the federal government has released employees, and I can look out my window and see gridlock on the streets already, traffic gridlock.
I'm sure.
Thank
Cheryl
you.
Johnson, thank you very much.
And listen,
Yeah.
be aware that, it's very hard to get through on the phone, so if you call us and you're not able to get through, that's because so many of the circuits, both cell phone
Excuse
and
me,
regular
Cheryl,
phone,
just a moment. We're just getting a
busy.
report from the Associated Press that a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department. We are just hearing this from the Associated Press, a car bomb exploding outside the State Department here in Washington. We have no details of that, but we'll bring them to you as they come in to us. Let's go back to Megan McGrath, who is near the Pentagon off Columbia Pike. Megan?
Yeah, if you take a look behind me, you can see in the last few minutes we've actually seen that section of the Pentagon where the explosion took place. It has actually collapsed in a rather large section. You can see that the smoke is still billowing from the area. We still are seeing some flames coming from inside the building, and the whole section has literally collapsed upon itself. That will give you an idea of just how tremendous this explosion was. Just to be able to do this kind of damage to such a secure building, it just really indicates how powerful this was. And again, we were driving by the area, and you felt kind of a tremor as you were driving by. You could feel a disturbance in the air, and then that's when we looked over, and that's when we saw the fireball and saw the damage that was done. Now, we are being told by military officials to clear the area. There were a lot of people, a lot of folks in cars, a lot of employees from the Navy Annex who actually left their building, abandoned their cars in the street, and were up on this ridge taking a look at the damage and watching the rescue effort. All of those people are being cleared out of the area at this point. And that's really all we can tell you. But if you just take a look at the side of that building, it really is quite dramatic. And of course, emergency crews are here on the scene trying to secure the situation. But at this point, they are evacuating everybody out of this area. Back to you.
Thanks,
thank you, Megan. As we heard from Cheryl Johnson, there are massive traffic jams around as we continue to follow the impact of this here in Washington, D.C.
Apparently all federal employees have been released from their offices, and that is going to cause major problems. Once again, the latest news is that we have received word from the Associated Press that a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department. That, according to senior law enforcement officials quoted by the Associated Press. And now we're going to go to Jerry Edwards with Metro Traffic Control, and he can perhaps show us some other pictures and tell us what the effect on traffic is. Jerry?
Barbara and Joe, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Indeed, as the federal offices now are being released and people are leaving downtown, let me bring up a couple of the traffic cameras. We are looking at particularly tough traffic in many locations. We'll start over Northern Virginia on 395. This is outbound traffic. The left side of your screen, the camera's a little blurry. Outbound 395. Delays begin back at the 14th Street Bridge. You can see police have blocked off the exit, which would take you up toward the Pentagon for obvious reasons. So 395 now, coming out of downtown, is backing up. And again, there's no exit to the Pentagon, which is causing a lot of confusion. Route 110 is closed. Let's switch gears and show you the inbound side of the Roosevelt Bridge. I'm sorry, this is the outer loop of the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. No problems at the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, no accidents. It's all volume right now as people are leaving. This is, in essence, an afternoon rush hour we're dealing with, so be prepared for that. Here we are with another shot of traffic getting across the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. If we get additional information, what we're being told now, of course, all the Potomac bridges, the Memorial, the Roosevelt, and of course, traffic coming up the 14th Street Bridge is going to be diverted. 395 is closed at the exit for the Pentagon. Folks in Maryland don't have any problems right now. We've taken a few calls, people concerned about traffic in Maryland. That's not a problem right now. If we can go to V4 on the fly here, guys, and see the 14th Street Bridge. This is the inbound side, which kind of surprises us at this point, where 395 northbound to the inbound 14th Street Bridge is open. However, at this point, it appears that most of the traffic that would come off the Southeast-Southwest Freeway headed into downtown, of course, is going to be completely closed off. So again, we will keep you updated. But what we're dealing with now, of course, is everyone's leaving downtown, headed outbound. So the inbound side is not as important as the outbound side. We're dealing with basically an afternoon rush hour, plus all the activity that's going on. Obviously a very busy time. We are here, and we will keep you updated throughout all of this. Barbara and Joe, back to you.
Right,
Thanks
Jerry.
very much, Jerry. We're going to show you another picture of the Pentagon where we could see that the structure had collapsed upon itself right where the plane apparently hit, and now the Pentagon officials are evacuating everyone from the area there, according to the Associated Press, because they fear another plane could be en route to the Pentagon.
Senior law enforcement officials say a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department. That from the AP we're just getting. It was already among buildings here in the nation's capital that had been evacuated, so people had been asked to leave. They were leaving. We have just heard that the second tower has collapsed in New York City. The second World Trade Center tower has just collapsed in New York. We're looking at a live picture there. The first one collapsed about an hour ago now, and now the second apparently has done the same.
Well, this is not only devastating damage, it is devastating to look at this, but yes, the second tower has now collapsed. This after two separate plane crashes into one plane into each of the towers earlier this morning. There has been a rash of terrorist activity, of course, a plane crashing into the Pentagon. Here we're looking at video now We're going to rejoin NBC coverage now. You can see it start to collapse.
That's a videotaped replay.
We are back at 10:30 Eastern Time on this Tuesday morning, this horrific, incredible, not to be believed Tuesday morning. You are looking at live pictures of the World Trade Center where just a few minutes ago, within the last minute actually, the second Twin Tower collapsed. Just to recap, if you're just joining us, around 8:42 Eastern Time this morning here in New York City, a plane crashed into the right Twin Tower of the World Trade Center about 2/3 of the way up the building, leaving a huge gaping hole, a huge fire, and tons of billowing smoke. About 25 minutes later, a second jet, believed to be a 727 or a 737,
some reports of a 757 even,
then crashed in the second Twin Tower. The first plane, incidentally, was en route from Boston, Massachusetts to Los Angeles.
Here's the video, I think, of the second plane striking the tower.
That's right. We're not sure the origin of that plane, is my understanding. The first plane that caused that hole on the right-hand side in the other Twin Tower was from Boston to LAX to Los Angeles. It was Flight 11, American Airlines. We have confirmed that that plane was hijacked. What happened following the hijacking is unclear. We should note that about an hour after the first collision at the Pentagon, reportedly another plane crashed into the Pentagon, which is just outside Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. All air traffic has been stopped.
Government buildings have been evacuated, as have other buildings across the country. The Sears Tower in Chicago was evacuated. You can imagine that other buildings in major cities and small cities around the country are probably being evacuated as well.
There's an unconfirmed report of a car bomb at the State Department. We have not been able to pin that down. There is also, Jim Miklashevsky was told that there was an unconfirmed report of another air hijacking. We share this with you not in an attempt to in any way exacerbate what is already a terrible situation, but so much has come true today based on these early reports that we want you to have as much information as we can possibly get. At the Pentagon, all people outside were told to take cover just moments ago, but Jim Miklashevsky said the skies were clear.
There was an unconfirmed report of another hijacking with the plane headed towards Washington. Again, we don't want to sound alarmist, but that is something that Mick heard while he was at the Pentagon. We also want to mention that the president is en route from Longboat Key, Florida, where he was there to visit an elementary school to talk about literacy. Obviously, clearly, his agenda has changed dramatically. He will convene a meeting of the National Security Council as soon as he gets home. Colin Powell is also on his way back from Lima, Peru. He was scheduled to be in Bogota, Colombia.
And probably not at the White House. They'll probably take him to a safe location. There are a number of them, some in the hills of Virginia, as you know. And my guess is that Air Force One is in the unusual situation of having a fighter plane escort on its way back from Florida today. That's where we stand.
Think about the loss of life that we could have seen this morning. If you think about the fact that when full, the World Trade Centers hold about 50,000 people, no telling how many people were at work before 9 o'clock this morning and then shortly after 9 o'clock in the other tower. But if you look at this picture here, Tom and Katie, at Lower Manhattan, it appears that terrorists have succeeded this time in doing what terrorists tried to do back in 1993.
This is war. This is a declaration and an execution of an attack on the United States. Two of our most conspicuous symbols of the American system of capitalism. The Pentagon, which of course is the headquarters of the most mighty military in the world, was attacked today as well. The White House has been evacuated. The State Department has been evacuated. Financial markets have been immobilized. All flights taking off after these attacks were grounded.
International flights have been sent to Canada.
It turns out it's transatlantic flights only going to Canada now. So there has been great chaos visited upon this country, to say nothing, as you pointed out, Matt, so importantly, of the still untold loss of life, and it's going to be horrendous. We don't know yet what the exact numbers are, but we can only tell you by looking at those pictures that you can guess as well as that we can, that there are going to be a lot of people who are not going to be able to escape that.
Back in 1993, when the bomb blew up in the basement of the World Trade Center, so many survivors talked about how long it took them, with no power in the elevators, to walk down the smoke-filled stairways. And you think about how many people were still trying to escape those buildings when first one and then the second tower collapsed.
And of course, the triage unit that has been set up, area hospitals are all receiving victims. And as Matt said, 50,000 capacity when everybody is in the building. But many people at 8:42 a.m. here in New York are at their desks, working in their offices. One young man or one man was reached by phone and was asked what is happening there, and he said, we are blanking, dying here. And there was screaming and yelling and pure chaos, understandably, going on in the background.
There's a picture of Lower Manhattan, ladies and gentlemen, the most important city in the world in so many ways. And now it has been attacked by terrorists at the World Trade Center, and the damage is beyond our ability to tell you in great detail.
Let me mention that,
I was going to say, here's what the president said. He canceled an education appearance in Florida. Here's what he said just a short time ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. I, unfortunately, will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary Rod Page and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President